Hi students, in this particular last video we're going to be looking at a few things. Implications for managers. We're going to be looking at intellectual ability and kind of figuring out differentiation between physical and intellectual disabilities. So we're going to be taking in 3 objectives, not 2. Okay? So it's going to be objectives 3, 4, and 5. The last one being implications for managers. So just follow on, and this will be the last reading, listening, and viewing video. And then what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to do a real quick, brief video, okay, on the assignment that is coming up, which will be hypothetical number 1 for this particular coming week. Okay, you already have a threaded discussion in there that's due this Thursday, but now this will be for what's coming up next week. Alright, you'll have a week to do that. So let's get through this last part of the theory, and let's start looking at ability, the next objective, intellectual ability. Okay, we're good. So, intellectual ability, actually, is an individual's current capacity to perform the various tasks in a job. And what that is overall abilities, and they're essentially made up of two sets of factors. Look at PowerPoint 213. And that is intellectual abilities and physical abilities. So look at PowerPoint 2.14 and Exhibit 2.2. Ability is an individual's current capacity to perform the various tasks in a job. Overall, abilities are made up primarily of 2 sets, intellectual and physical. So let's talk about the intellectual first. Intellectual abilities are abilities needed to perform mental activities, thinking, reasoning, problem solving. Most societies place a high value on intelligence, and for good reason. Smart people generally earn more money and attain higher values of education. They are more likely to emerge as leaders of groups. If you look at Exhibit 2-2, the 7 most frequent cited dimensions making up intellectual abilities are number aptitude, verbal comprehension, perceptual speed, inductive reasoning, deductive reasoning, spatial visualization, and memory. Intellectual dimensions are positively related, so if you score high on the verbal end, say verbal comprehension for example, you are more likely, okay, to also score high on spatial, looking at the big picture, visualization, and have a good memory. The correlations aren't really perfect, but it's meaning people do have specific abilities that predict important work-related outcomes. For example, what type of learning outcomes, what is your learning outcome to this chapter? What are you getting out of it based on the objectives? Some will do better than others in that area. It's kind of like doing a SWOT analysis on an individual. And we know that everyone isn't great at everything. So we have to kind of, figure how one individual compensates another, especially like on a work team. So the correlations aren't perfect, but they kind of predict what's going to go on with the person and their ability to do well at a job. However, if those outcomes are high enough, researchers recognize a general factor of intelligence which is called GMA, or general mental ability. Evidence strongly supports that the ideas that the structure and measures of intellectual abilities generally are very sporadically placed across cultures. There's some evidence that IQ scores vary to some degree across cultures, but these differences are much smaller when what we take into account education or economic differences. Jobs differ in the demands they place on intellectual abilities. The more complex a job is in terms of information processing demands, the more general intelligence and verbal abilities will be necessary to perform that job successfully. When employee behavior is highly routine and there are few or no opportunities to exercise direction, a high IQ is not as important to performing as well. Like if you're loading boxes in the dock or warehouse picking things, or working in areas where you don't have to use a lot of mathematical correlations, and it's difficult. Doesn't mean anyone is less valuable, but different people are suited more for different things. Interestingly, while intelligence is a big help at performing a job well, it doesn't make people happier or more satisfied with their jobs. Look at PowerPoint 215, Exhibit 2.3 on physical abilities. Though the changing nature of work suggests intellectual abilities are increasingly important for a lot of jobs, physical abilities have been and always will remain valuable. Research on hundreds of jobs has identified 9 basic abilities. Look at Exhibit 2-3 again. These 9 basic abilities are needed in the performance of physical abilities. Individuals differ in the extent to which they have each of these abilities. So now let's go from physical abilities to the role of disabilities. The importance of ability obviously creates problems when we attempt to formulate workplace policies that recognize diversity in terms of a disability status. As we've noted many times, recognizing that individuals have different abilities that can be taken into account when we make hiring decisions is not problematic. However, it is discriminatory to make blanket assumptions about people on the basis of a disability. For example, the Americans with Disability Act clearly states that if someone could do a job with a reasonable accommodation, they're not considered to have a disability. And we have to keep that in mind. So let's look at PowerPoint 216 and take a good look at how we, in fact, look at 216 and 217. What type of diversity management strategy should we have? We have to be more aware and more sensitive to the needs and differences of others. Diversity is much more likely to be successful when we see it as everyone's business. That if we believe it helps only certain groups of employees, it's wrong. Attracting, selecting, developing, and retaining diverse employees is essential. So when we put our ads in the paper and publications, and we just target specific demographic groups like colleges, universities, minorities, forming partnerships and all that type of thing, the selection process has to be one of the most important places to apply diversity efforts. So what kind of rules do we have for managers? Managers who hire need to value fairness and objectivity. That's key. In selecting employees, and focus on the productive potential of the new recruits, and that's all. Fortunately, ensuring that hiring is a bias-free process is important. When managers use a well-defined protocol for assessing applicant talent, and the organization clearly prioritizes non-discriminatory policies, qualifications will now become more prevalent when we hire from far different demographic characteristics. Personality is very important for a career advancement as well. Co-workers who have good personalities are likely to be promoted because they are attracting all different demographics. Research shows that all managers prefer to have an organization that values diversity. Look at PowerPoint 218. We need diversity in groups. You guys are working in teams. You do a SWOT analysis on each other. You need to be diverse in how you choose your teams. Okay? And what you get out of those teams. Look at PowerPoint 219. Effective diversity programs. To promote diversity, we need to have 3 distinct components. Teach managers about the legal framework. The second thing is teach managers how a diverse workforce will be better to serve a diverse market. Third, foster personal development with all employees on their skills and abilities. 4, most negative reactions to employment discrimination are based on the idea of discriminatory treatment, and it is unfair. 5, regardless of race and gender, people are generally in favor of diverse-oriented programs. And 6, research suggests that diversity experiences are most likely to lead to positive adaptation for all parties. 7, organizational leaders should examine their workforce to determine whether target groups have been underutilized. And 8, if groups of employees are not proportionally represented in top management, managers should look at any hidden barriers. Finally, look at PowerPoint 2.2. Implication for managers. Understand your organization's anti-discrimination policies. Assess and challenge your stereotype beliefs to increase objectivity. Look beyond observable biographical characteristics and consider the individual's capabilities before making management decisions. Fully evaluate what accommodations a person with disabilities will need, and then fine-tune the job to that person's ability, not disability. Finally, seek to understand and respect the unique biographical characteristics of all employees. A fair but individualistic approach yields the best performance. So this is the end of the theory behind the chapter, and I've covered all 5 of the objectives. And what I'm going to do now is, based on each one of those objectives, give you a YouTube video right below each objective to observe for that particular one with my particular lecture. So, after you have done all of that, you will have your assignment, your first hypothetical, right below all of this reading, listening, and viewing. That assignment will be due a week from this coming Thursday. This is what we'll be covering in Chapter 2 this week. Thank you.